I didn't know anything about layout, and I panicked at one point because you're supposed to pick what department, what speciality you want to have, and I didn't know. I like everything a little bit, and I didn't know which one to choose. And it turns out that's good news, because in layout we do a little bit of everything. We have to build the scene in a way that it's presentable to the director. Because the reason why I decided to do what I do was when I saw the extended edition DVDs for the Lord of the Rings, because it was in a moment in my life when I didn't know what to do with my life, and I loved movies, but I didn't know making movies was an option. And when I saw that DVD with all the documentaries on how the movie was made, it was a movie that I loved. That's when I had the idea of, okay, you can make movies using a computer. That's what I want to do. So they were the ones that inspired me, Weta in New Zealand, the ones that inspired me to leave everything I was doing because it was not making sense for me, and jump into animation VFX. So I sent them my reel and my resume million times since I finished school, and obviously they didn't respond at first because I didn't have much to offer, but I kept insisting until they finally replied one day, and they made me an offer, and I got to join them. And it was by chance they were working on the Hobbit, so I was fortunate enough to move to New Zealand and work on the Hobbit trilogy with the same team that inspired me to start doing what I do. So it was like perfect circle. I could close the circle, and it was a dream come true for me. We're even more productive in many ways than from the studio, because there's no commute, there's no excuses to get late, there's no long coffee breaks, and you can even when you need to attend a meeting that you don't need to participate, but you need to be listening to what's happening, you could be listening to the meeting while you work.
Hi, so welcome to the VFX Artist Podcast. This week we have Carolin'a Jiménez García. I hope I said that right.
You pronounced it really well. I'm impressed.
Thank you.
Hello, Daniel. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. So you can see the time zone difference. Carolin'a is in Canada, and he's now Canadian, actually. I saw from your Insta story. So you're a Canadian citizen. Like a couple of weeks ago, was it? Like a month ago?
No, it was last year, like 6 months ago.
Oh,
so,
okay.
So finally, after a few years, I'm originally from Spain, but now I'm Canadian also. So double citizenship.
Very cool. Yeah, dual citizenship is the way to go. Yeah. So, and I'm here. It's nighttime, so you can see I'm in the dark.
And I have my coffee with me.
Yeah, I'm gonna have hot chocolate in a minute. And tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how you got started.
Hello everybody, I'm Carolin'a, and I'm a layout artist and in VFX for movies and TV shows now. We do a lot of TV shows now due to the pandemic as well, which we can talk about that later. And yeah, I'm specialized in layout, in the layout department. I'm originally from Spain, and now I live in Canada, in Vancouver, in rainy Vancouver. Today is super rainy, actually. I took the pup out before this recording just to make sure that he's napping while we record, because he's a puppy and he can be noisy, and it was pouring rain, but that's fine. This is Vancouver, so that's fine. And it was a long trip and long journey till I get here, because I've been bouncing around the globe, chasing work like many of us have. I'm not the only one.
Yeah, you were in Weta as well, right? So I saw your Hobbits on your reel. I'm wondering.
Yeah.
So that's literally everywhere around the world, like Spain, New Zealand.
Yeah, it was Madrid, Australia, then London, then New Zealand, and then here. So it's been quite a journey, but it's the VFX journey, right? It's what many of us do, and it's been really interesting. I had the I feel very lucky. I feel very fortunate that I got a job that allows me to travel around the world and learn other languages and meet other cultures and get other nationalities. so I think we're fortunate in that way. And I've been in Vancouver the longest I've been after getting out of Spain, which has been 7 years almost. And yeah, so far I'm staying here for a while, because it's moving from country to country. It can be painful at times, but yeah, it's been quite an adventure.
It is. I mean, there's an excitement, and obviously, I think the younger you are, the more fun it is, and the more you want to settle down. Then the more things you get, like a dog, even a pug, let alone kids. But I mean, even a dog, right? Once you get a dog, how are you gonna?
Hey, I can take my dog wherever I want.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's had as adventures as I am, I'm hoping. But he's a puppy still. But yeah, he's a pandemic dog. When you're working 8-9 hours minimum every day at the studio, there's no way you can have a dog. It's going to be home alone waiting for you. But now we're all working from home, so now I could have a dog. So yeah, it's another pandemic dog.
As long as you keep the pandemic dog. The pandemic dogs are not just for pandemics; they're for life.
No, obviously, it's. I've been wanting to have a dog I had dogs all my life, and I've been wanting to have a dog for a long time. But yeah, work didn't allow me. So now, yeah.
Great. So asking about layout. So I mean, I've always associated layout with match move, but actually, a lot of the shows and a lot of shots I've seen on your reel. They're completely CG. So your layout is actually, you're doing the camera work. You're creating the camera from nothing, really. So tell us a little bit about how you approach layout and how it works.
Yeah, layout. It's sometimes, especially when you're at the beginning of your career, it's one of the departments that's probably less understood in general, because it's not in the name what we do. Everybody knows what animation does or what modeling does, but what's layout? I didn't know what layout was when I got out of the animation school, because no one told me. But yeah, our main responsibility and our main work is the camera. The camera is the main product of the work that layout does. If we have a track camera, if we have a plate, then sometimes it's just a track camera. We don't change much. Sometimes we have to use the track camera as a starting point, so we can use the plate and then modify that camera in the way that the shot needs. And when it's a full CG shot, like you say, then we have complete freedom and to place the camera and animate the camera the way we want. And not only the camera, obviously we have to place in front of the camera everything that needs to be in front of the camera. We get a clean plate with everything, with all the green screens removed and everything that doesn't need to be there removed, and then we have to add everything that needs to be there. It could be environments, it could be characters and everything that needs to, all the set dressing. And we do an animation blocking, which means that everything that moves, we move it. As a chess piece animation, we don't do detail animation, but composition of the shot, it's our responsibility as well. So if things move, it affects the composition. So we do an animation blocking, and then all those assets and all those elements that we put in front of the camera, we pass to the next departments in the pipeline. Usually after us comes animation, and they do the detail animation. We don't pay a lot of attention on moving detail fingers or obviously faces, anything like that. So we say that's why we call it chess piece animation. Things move from point A to point B at the right speed and at the right place, and then we pass that to animation, and they do the
So I'm guessing, so for example, a character enters a room in a wide shot. While the other character is speaking, they pace across the room, and when they reach their line of dialogue, they're in a close-up, and so it's a close-up shot of them, and they deliver their line of dialogue. So you would make sure that
they're properly framed, and that they move at the right speed, and that they're at the right distance from the camera. And if it's a dialogue, it's pretty easy. But when we're talking about, I don't know, car chases or monsters fighting or outer space madness. Then there are a lot of things moving, and everything that moves is going to affect the framing and the composition. So we have to make sure that the camera does the right thing at the right speed, and everything moves at the right speed. So that becomes the reference that the other departments, especially animation, use to do their thing.
And so as you move up through the ranks from like your first job as in layout and to senior and to lead, how does that role evolve?
I think that's probably like in every other department. You start as a junior, and then you work hard, you get more experience. As you get experience, you get more responsibilities, and then you get in charge of maybe a sequence, and then you get in charge of maybe a shot, a complete show maybe, and then you get a team that you have to supervise and help those who have less experience than you do, and it's a journey. But I think it's the same for everybody, right?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, that is absolutely true. More specifically though, I mean, so I guess you'd be given layout shots, and they'd probably more be from Match Move because it's a little bit simpler to follow. And as you are more senior, they entrust you to actually, perhaps manipulate the camera more and move things around. And
yeah, exactly. You train your juniors not only in layout, also in the pipeline, because every studio has a different pipeline, and they need to get comfortable on what the steps you need to take to bring everything that you need to your scene, and how to move everything. Well, how to move everything, and how you train your eye for composition, for framing and all that stuff. It also comes with time, but then also how to package everything to publish to other departments. That's more technical than artistic probably, and that's something you need to learn every time you start in a new studio, because every studio is slightly different. But artistically, yeah, you start with simpler things, and then you challenge the juniors slowly to push them to learn what, yeah, step by step. Yeah, it's interesting because probably the ultimate goal is to be able to work on a full CG shot that's long and crazy, and be able to deal with it by yourself, and those can be challenging and also a lot of fun. We have the most fun with full CG shots, obviously.
Yeah, because you've got the freedom to be the cameraman.
Yeah, exactly.
So you studied animation in Madrid. Did you study in Madrid? Where did you study?
It was kind of a long time ago now. Damn. There were only back then, and I say back then as if it was, yeah, but it's more than a decade ago, and there were only like 2 schools in Madrid because everything was super new, and this was not very popular yet, and so there was not a lot of options out there. Now it's easier. There are a lot of schools, and you could study online, and their universities are offering this kind of thing. But back then there were only 2 schools, and they would teach us a general. I did like a master course where they teach us almost a bit of everything, because there were not enough people to divide us in groups for different departments. So I learned a little bit of animation, modeling, lighting. So it was a bit of everything, which was good because that's what a layout artist needs to be, a good generalist. I didn't know anything about layout, and I panicked at one point because you're supposed to pick what department, what speciality you want to have, and I didn't know. I like everything a little bit, and I didn't know which one to choose. And it turns out that's good news, because in layout we do a little bit of everything. We have to build the scene in a way that is presentable to the director. That means sometimes we need to do a little bit of modeling, a little bit of texturing. It's not final textures, but so we don't present things in gray shaders. We do a little bit of texturing. We do a little bit of lighting. It's not final lighting, but we need to figure out where light comes from, especially if it's important for storytelling, so we can show a better looking, a beauty pass of what the shot is going to look like to the director. So we do a little bit of everything, and that's super fun.
So how does that relate to like previs and post-vis? Are you connected? Are you pulling stuff in?
Oh yeah, previs is basically our reference. So we get when we start a new shot, we usually have obviously the director's indications from the VFX soup, and we have the previs version of the shots of the movie, or the sequence, at least the sequences that we're going to work on. We have a previs version that it's just a reference, but it's a good reference because the director likes it. And that's our starting point. So previs is what we use as reference, but we need to use the proper camera and the proper plate and the proper assets to, using previs as a starting point, build a shot.
So given that you're quite generalist, a generalist department, are you mostly working in Maya? I mean, I presume. Yeah. And is there 90% of our job is Maya. And do you think that's always going to stay the same, or are there any sort of things on the horizon?
At school, I learned 3D Studio Max, oddly enough. And my first movie was an animation, was Planet 51. It was completely done in 3D Max. And then I switched to, my second movie was Happy Feet 2, was also animation. And then I switched to VFX, and then I had to learn Maya. But I started with 3D Studio Max. And I've used Maya ever since then. And I don't think it's going to change. In Scanline, we also use 3D Studio Max because the fluid simulation that we use in some of the lighting is based on 3D Studio Max, so we use both, but not in layout. In layout, it's just Maya, and I haven't used much else the rest of my career. So, and I don't know if that will change. I'm not sure.
Do you think the real time sort of stuff might get involved in?
Yes, that's coming. That definitely is coming, and it's influencing what workflow and the new ideas that the technology is given to filmmakers. But I don't know if we're going to implement it in our workflow in the pipeline with Maya. We're still figuring those things out.
Yeah, exciting times, I guess. And as a lead, that's going to be a big part of your role, to look at these possibilities if they start.
Yeah, for now it's more of a curiosity thing, and the studio wants us to know what it is, and there's already training options, so we understand what might come our way, but still not we're not using it daily. But yeah, we're starting to learn what it is and what it means, and what it will mean in the future. Probably near future.
Yeah, because I mean, even if you're putting stuff out that's not final quality, the fact you've got access to things like mega scans and this crazy stuff that just looks amazing, and even if you're going to put something else in, it's still way better than what you would have put in before, right? So a mega scan's tree looks like a tree. I mean, you don't have to do much more to it.
Yeah, it's going to definitely affect the way we do and the way we present things and stuff like that. Yeah. Interesting times. And
you have a really strong knowledge of trends in the history of the industry. I mean, I followed, before I knew specifically what job you did, I saw that you have a very strong Twitter channel. It's a Spanish language channel aimed at a generalist audience, I'd say. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of a big deal. I mean, it's like something like more than 70,000 followers on Twitter.
And mostly I don't go in depth or in detail into VFX technical stuff. It's more filmmaking. It's just because we love film, obviously. I do what I do because I love what I do, because I love films and filmmaking. So I'm investigating how they do stuff and how technology evolves and how the history of film and film history, how everything started, what those who started inventing and investigating the technology of how cinema started and how everything evolved technically. I find all of that super interesting and relevant to what we do, because those are the fathers of the things we do, or all the tricks we use. So it's easy to share it out with other people that are interested in the same things in social media, and apparently people like it.
Yeah, no, they do. What do you want to give the hashtag? Not the hashtag. Oh my god, the name of the account.
Yeah, it's a bit tricky because it's okay Okinfografia. It's in Spanish. I'm sorry, guys. We'll write it down later.
No, but it's brilliant. We'll post a link. But if you speak Spanish or if you're learning Spanish or interested in Spanish, it's brilliant.
La sensación que nos produce el uso de un color en el cine depende en gran medida de cómo lo combinemos con otros colores, de qué color predomine o de qué colores estén ausentes. Existen diferentes esquemas de color posibles. El director, junto con el director de fotografía y los equipos de diseño de producción y dirección artística, seleccionan cuidadosamente la paleta de color que usarán y que establecerá en gran medida el tono de la película a través de la atmósfera visual que transmitirá.
I actually found, even though my Spanish.
And Twitter translate it for you if you need to into English.
You can
give it a try.
You can use Google Translate and translate it. But I found, like, for example, even though I'm still sort of intermediate Spanish, I speak Italian, so I kind of guess.
There you go. It's close, yeah.
But you did one about some of the volume stuff used on The Mandalorian, and I found it was actually one of the better explanations I found. And easier to follow, and it gave me a better sort of understanding of the sort of weaknesses and strengths compared just as a big sort of complete introduction. Then a lot of stuff that was in English, even though that's my native language.
When I learned there was new technology that was being used in The Mandalorian, it was important for me to understand what it was and why it was new and why everybody was talking about it. So I did my own research, and the way I understood it is the way I tried to explain it. So I try to explain things the way I would like people to explain things to me. And I do it in Spanish because usually there's more information in English in general. So I try to pass all this information to the Spanish-speaking community in the world, which is huge. And I enjoy it very much. So yeah, thanks.
Very cool. If anyone on the podcast can hear stomping, that's my end. That's my children. Hopefully I'll be able to get all of those stompings out. But yeah, unfortunately, they're children, they stomp.
This is life. Hey, my dog is asleep. That's why you don't hear him, but you could.
Oh, we had a cat jump into the last recording I did. So we've had all sorts. Yeah, so that's really cool. We will post a link to that, and I think you've used it very effectively because the threads are quite informative. They're all quite tightly themed, and the account itself is quite clear. Like, it's all about that. And I've noticed that when you want to do something else, talk about something else, it's on a different platform. Like, your Instagram is totally different. It's not related at all. Yeah. And I think that's really clever. I think that's something that anyone that's sort of interested in expand their social media presence can look at and go, oh, this is great. I can post my selfies and my stuff on Instagram and my cosplay and all this kind of cool, fun stuff.
More personal, more day-to-day life, and Twitter is more to talk about movies and filmmaking and even though sometimes we all go be personal, why not? But yeah, and YouTube is more for longer educational videos that I take time to make and stuff like that. Yeah, every option has something different to offer.
Yeah, I mean obviously you could use any platform for any one of these things, but I think it's a good idea if you are building some kind of presence to specialize each platform into something, so that people kind of have an idea of what they're following, what they're in for, what you're about. And of course, they can, if they're interested in you and they want to learn more about you in general, they can follow you everywhere.
You want to see pictures of my dog? Then that's Instagram. There are a lot of them, way too many.
Brilliant. Never too many.
That's so true. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, the producer I work with who loves pugs, and we gave her, when she left, we gave her like a pug pendant, I think. So, yeah. So she'll probably be following your account now. So anyway, going back to sort of layout and stuff like that. So what has been your favourite project?
By far, the Hobbit trilogy. More than technically or artistically or professionally for sure, but it's almost personally, because for me it was like a dream come true. Because the reason why I decided to do what I do was when I saw the extended edition DVDs for the Lord of the Rings, because it was in a moment in my life when I didn't know what to do with my life, and I loved movies, but I didn't know making movies was an option. And when I saw that DVD with all the documentaries on how the movie was made, it was a movie that I loved. That's when I had the idea of, okay, you can make movies using a computer. That's what I want to do. So they were the ones that inspired me, Weta in New Zealand, the ones that inspired me to leave everything I was doing because it was not making sense for me, and jump into animation VFX. So I sent them my reel and my resume million times since I finished school, and obviously they didn't respond at first because I didn't have much to offer, but I kept insisting until they finally replied one day, and they made me an offer, and I got to join them. And it was by chance they were working on the Hobbit, so I was fortunate enough to move to New Zealand and work on the Hobbit trilogy with the same team that inspired me to start doing what I do. So it was like perfect circle. I could close the circle, and it was a dream come true for me.
Yeah, and I think we've all experienced that a little bit as you get more senior in the industry, is that you start out and it's so difficult. You send out your reel, and of course maybe you haven't got any professional work, so and you don't get a reply. And then maybe you are working, but you're not quite in the sector or the kind of projects that you want to work in, and so you haven't got anything that's similar to what they do to show them in your reel. But eventually you hit a point where it's like you've got everything, and suddenly they go from like not even like replying to like sometimes coming for you, and you haven't even applied to them. And it's interesting. It's quite a sort of gratifying feeling when you realize, oh wow, I've come somewhere.
We all start from the bottom, obviously, and the first steps are really hard to take because, like you say, you don't have much to show, and to be hired to do what you want to do because you haven't done it before. So you have to keep trying until someone sees something in you that fits what they're looking for, or they in desperate need for hiring people, which is also a good thing because when they hire juniors, at least back then, when at the end of a production we need to give a last push, and sometimes they hire more people at the end, and when they don't have many options, they get the people that might work but don't have that much experience, and that's when you get your first chance, and then once you're in, and then you get more experience, you have more things to show, and that things get a bit easier. It's easier to find other opportunities inside the industry once you're in, but getting in, it can be tricky. It took me a few years, like everybody, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think it's much harder to find your first job than to find any other job. I mean, unless you really mess it up. Assuming you're
exactly. But yeah, that's the same for everybody in every industry. Probably beginnings are tough, but it's still worth it. So keep trying.
You're at Weta, and also you worked on the planet. I think it was Dawn of the Planet.
Yes. In between Hobbits, we worked in a couple more shows in between the Hobbits.
Yeah, but there's some really great, work in that movie. I mean, I think
that was fun. That was fun too.
It's where they really pushed the boundaries of realism. I think in terms of some of the quality. Maybe from the layout perspective, that doesn't change that much. I guess how real the final lighting and compositing works, perhaps. Although, does it change the way they're expecting you to move the cameras and things like that?
Cameras didn't change much the experience for us on Planet of the Apes specifically. But what I remember that was challenging for Planet was the set dressing. Do you remember the California street chart where all the apes are riding horses and shooting guns and all that stuff? Well, in layout we had to do all the set dressing for that street, the entire street, and it's an abandoned Los Angeles, and it's been abandoned for years. So we had to put every like vines crawling up the buildings, and there was grass growing in every crack in the in the road, and we had to put the grass bits one by one just to make sure that everything was detailed, and it took a lot of time, and then by the end everything is dark and there's a lot of smoke and then explosions and you don't see the grass. But we spent a lot of weeks making sure that every piece of detail and every piece of grass and all the junk and all the debris that's around was there, so you don't see it, but it's there, believe me. it was challenging.
I did even see a meme like that. It was talking about Blade Runner 49, and it was like, modeler, look at all the detailed city I built, and then the composite was like about that, and then it shows the big smoked out scene of Los Angeles. I mean, I guess that happens to you guys a lot, right? Like, I mean, it's not an uncommon experience.
It happens to all of us. We sometimes an entire shot or entire sequence gets cut out. So you're working in a shot, and you put your soul and your heart in it for days and days, and then in editing it gets cut out because those things happen, and you're like, where was it's supposed to be my shot there, it's not there anymore. So it's not that you don't see the grass, it's that you don't see the shot. But that's how movies work, right? So that has happened to all of us, and that's fine.
Yeah, no, it's you've got to take the heartbreak with the fun.
What can you do?
What can you do? And I guess as a lead as well, there's something you've got to, I mean, the juniors might not be quite as tough at that stuff, and you've got to keep them excited when, you know, you're like, well, yeah, I know you did that great work, and they're not putting it in the movie, and now you need to do some more great work, which will go in the movie.
And this is the first time that happens to you, but it's not going to be the last. So you better deal with it. Yeah, no, that's how movie works, and it's happened since films exist. So yeah, sometimes your part gets cut out.
Yeah.
It must be harder when you're an actor. It must be much harder.
Yeah. I had a friend in Italy, and he had a really awful contract where he's like, his payment was dependent on being in the edit. So not only was he cut out of this commercial, but then he was no longer being paid for it.
Oh my God, no! At least we get paid for all the hours that we put in. At least.
Yeah, well, most of the hours. No, you're in Canada, so you get paid all the hours that you work.
Yeah, you're in London, so sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Yeah, that's part of the industry.
It's getting better. It's getting better. There are companies starting to pay overtime, and generally companies are asking, are not pushing for all of that unpaid overtime like a few years, not all that long ago. And I think that might just be because it's harder to get artists. It might be because I think they're realizing that actually the quality of work is better if you don't mess people about.
Obviously, if you keep your team well taken care of and happy, then the results are going to be better as well, and we deserve to be paid for the time we put in. If they're going to ask us to put extra effort and time, we deserve to be compensated. Everybody deserves to be compensated. Yeah. The industry has gotten much better with the years. You would agree with me. It was slowly. We're getting there slowly.
And how is it compared? Obviously the studios, but you've actually. So, did you ever actually work in Spain?
Yeah, my first movie. The first project that I did was a TV show. That was the first project that I could do in the right direction instead of just doing, I don't know, anything other than doing actual things that got me to where I wanted to go. And so my first show was a TV show, and then my first movie was in Spain. And after that, I moved to Australia. So yeah, a little bit. I worked in a little bit.
So how have you found the work culture compares in these different countries? Is there things you sort of like in one place that you would like to bring to other places that you've worked, or?
More than countries, the difference is not so much in between countries as in between studios, I think. Because in the same country, you change to another studio, and the work ethic or culture could be quite different. So, and in Spain, I only worked in one studio, so I don't have all that much to compare with. And same with New Zealand, with Australia. So, more than changing countries, I feel like I changed studios, I changed companies. And here in Canada, I've worked in two companies, and they were quite different from each other as well. So I think, at least from my experience, the differences come from studio to studio or then country to country. When, at least work-wise, living-wise, yes, it's different. Living in London is very different from living in New Zealand and very different from living in Australia or Canada. But the work itself is not that different, I find.
And I guess the people are often the same, right? Like, wherever you go, you see the same faces sometimes.
You say exactly, and you have co-workers from all around the world. We all speak English, but we have a million different accents, and we do our best to communicate. And there's not one culture per country because each one of us is from different place, and that's also the beauty of it.
Yeah. Are there many Canadians working in Canadian studios? Because I don't see many. Like when I look on LinkedIn and things like that.
Well, maybe because it's a big film industry in general. There are a lot of schools, so most times we try to hire juniors from directly after school around here. But layout, for example, I think from the time we were like 20 people in layout around here in Scanline, I think there were 3-4 Canadians. That's it, and everybody else was from elsewhere. So that's great. I think that's great. People of all colors, sizes, nationalities, and yeah, that's great.
Cool. So going back to Canada actually. So Canada is, you're working in film. You're also doing TV. Now film obviously has this and Vancouver has the whole tax credit thing that brings the projects in. But like with London has a similar thing, but then of course there's the advertising industry and things like the BBC. So is there something similar in Canada with a lot of sort of Canadian content that's getting made that would get made even if all the Hollywood studios went away, or if the government came in and said we're not doing this tax thing?
Actually, I'm not sure, because the projects I get to work on are not necessarily Canadian projects. They're made here, and sometimes they're shot here. But in general, they're not Canadian. So obviously there are Canadian projects, but I'm not sure how many or how it works compared to London. Not sure. I know when I fly with Air Canada, most movies in the plane where you fly are from Canada, and they do that, and so I get to see what movies Canada has made when I'm flying. But in general, our projects are more Hollywood kind of projects. Yeah. Same for you guys, because it doesn't matter right now where you are. We all work in the same movies anyways.
Yeah, pretty much. I just started going back to advertising now, so I'm going to be on different things. So we'll see. Bit of a change of pace. But yeah, very often it's Hollywood, sometimes some British and European movies, which is always fun, especially if they get to have
and refreshing. Also refreshing.
I think it's good that, you know, it's not just Hollywood dominating all the VFX movies. I mean, all the movies in general. I mean, I think it's just one way of looking at the world, and sometimes it's nice to have different perspectives that also have enough budget to market them and to technically reach all the levels that they want to do. And it gets much harder with genres that need more money, like sci-fi or whatever. I mean,
but I like
comedies yet more so. But
I like to give as an example Mad Max Fury Road. It's a movie. It's an amazing movie. It's very different from what we used to from Hollywood, because it was made by an Australian filmmaker that I absolutely adore, and it's filled with VFX done by the same studios that usually work in the other kind of movies. So it was so refreshing to see a different take, because we get so used to the Hollywood structure of movies that we end up feeling that they're all more or less the same because they follow the same structure. So when you get something different from a different filmmaker, from different place, it's really refreshing and you learn a lot.
But so going back to I guess what you do in your day to day, so how would your typical working day kind of
Well, now things have changed a lot in the pandemic, so now we're all working from home. So my day-to-day now is quite different from what it used to be before the pandemic. So now we don't have an excuse to start late, right? Because my work studio is right there. So I try to go for a walk, because now that we're working from home and we have to make an effort to get out and to exercise a little bit and to socialize in a safe way with our workmates. I miss them a lot. I rather work from home now. I enjoy it very much, and we're very productive. But I miss the coffee with the girls, and I miss the department meeting every week, and the feedback you get when you're working physically surrounded by your workmates, and we can challenge each other and ask each other questions and stuff like that. That's the part that I think is missing the most. But everything else is basically the same, only we have dailies online. We have dailies once a day, and we work in our stuff, and I try to stay communicated with my team through online chatting and video conferences and phone calls and stuff like that. We have to make an extra effort because we're not physically seeing each other.
Yeah, especially with juniors, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. You have to be on top of things and making sure that everybody needs everything they need and stuff like that. But other than that, is do our shots and get together in dailies to see what we worked on, and yeah, and we've learned. Now it's normal. Now it was so weird at the beginning, but now it's what we do.
It has, yeah, and it was also considered impossible. Like you're told, you can't work on these franchises from home because of security, and you can't do it.
But we find a way, and we're even more productive in many ways than from the studio, because there's no commute, there's no excuses to get late, there's no long coffee breaks, and you can even when you need to attend a meeting that you don't need to participate, but you need to be listening to what's happening. You could be listening to the meeting while you work. Something was impossible before. Now you had to go to the meeting room and spend the time that you need in the meeting, and now I can be listening to whatever is needed to be. I need to know while I'm still working stuff.
Yeah, this is like the biggest productivity boost I found from working from home. Is the fact that the dailies becomes like a podcast. You can just have it on, listen to it, do your work. You hear your shot name, you jump in. I mean, I'm always behind with the mute button and all of these things.
Exactly. You need to remember to mute yourself. And we've all learned that.
Like, it's really useful, because if dailies, especially when you have later on, you get like dailies twice a day.
Or 3 times. Now that I'm working on 3 shows at the same time, I have dailies three times a day. And in the studio, it would be a lot of sitting on a room time. And now I can be sitting in front of my computer while I wait for dailies and we do all that stuff. So, and also overtime is easier, because I would rather do overtime at home than at the studio if I have to stay late. It's much easier. It feels different, and so in a way we're working more.
Sometimes, yeah. But then the save of the commute actually kind of, it feels like if I'm saving, I mean, it might be maybe 2.5 hours, maybe even 3 hours a day, then even if I had to do 2 hours overtime, it's not as bad.
It's not as bad, and it feels easier, and you get more work done in less time, so it's also less overtime in a way. And you're not, because when you're in the studio, you need to stay late, and you have to commute home late, and it's dark, and you're hungry, and you don't want to eat overtime food, and all that stuff. It ends up being those 2 hours of extra time end up being miserable. When you're home, it's not that bad, because you're home, and while you're rendering, you can prepare yourself something healthy to eat, and you have your dog with you, and you finish faster, let's say. So it's not that bad in that way.
Yeah, no, it's a lot easier. And people have started going back into the office now, but it's still, very much a mixed. But you're going into 2 times a week, maybe 3 times a week, and you're working 2 or 3 times at home, which I think works quite well. But
most people don't want to go back to the studio.
No,
I don't know if they're
it's amazing. I found it really
Right?
funny. I've seen a few like on big company meetings where they've talked about pitching the return to the office as this amazing thing, and then I'm watching the chat simultaneously, and it's not very popular. Like lots of people they actually now I'm with my cat and I'm not traveling on the tube. I mean, if you've been in London, you travel on the tube and the train, and it's not fun.
It's not fun. So if they make it optional or stuff like that, or it's just once or twice a week, I would be fine. I would be okay with that because I would get to see my workmates again, who I love. I miss the team. But I don't want to go full time to the studio, honestly.
Yeah, I don't think anyone really does, unless.
And I'm lucky enough that I can walk to work, but still.
Wow. So how far is it if you walk?
Half an hour.
Oh wow! So it's really, really close. So is Vancouver very small? I mean,
well, the downtown, the core downtown, it's small. You can walk from side to side in half an hour. Well, it's long, so it's half an hour from. I'm on one side of the water, and the studio would be at the other side, and it's half an hour walk. And Vancouver, the metropolis is bigger, obviously, but the studios that are downtown or AC it's very manageable in that way. Except for when it rains. Because it's half an hour under the rain to get there and half an hour back. Which is also okay. We all have big umbrellas and strong boots. No.
and then you get snow as well and cold, proper cold.
Not much. Not much, because this coast and Vancouver is the mildest of the weathers in Canada. If you go to the other coast, Toronto or Quebec or that side, that's bad. And they're like minus a lot, and they get a lot of snow and a lot of ice. When it snows a couple times here, and when it snows, it's kind of messy because it's really wet snow, so it ends up being sluggish on the ground, so it's more uncomfortable than it doesn't get all that cold.
So I guess as a lead, you're also going to have some involvement in recruitment, even if you're not looking at reels. I guess at some point they're going to say, "Hey, we've got this person we want to bring in your department."
Not necessarily. That's more of a supervisor kind of role. If they're thinking of hiring someone that I've worked with or that they think I might know, they might ask for my opinion. But in general, we don't get involved in at least in Scanline. I don't know. It might not work the same way in other studios, but that's a supervisor role.
Okay, yeah. No, I guess it depends also the size, because as you know, like when as the studios get bigger, lead and supervisor gets blurred in a smaller studio, and it tends.
In general, we have one lead per show, and one supervisor per department. So I can be leading one or two shows and helping on a third one, like I'm doing now. I don't always lead. Sometimes I just jump in to help whoever has a lot of work, and then we have a head of department.
Cool. So apart from how close is your Maya to just like standard Maya? Are you using things to what sort of things are you setting up to make your job a bit easier?
I think that's also probably common in all studios and all departments. We have the basic Maya, obviously. That is what we use, the basics of what Maya comes with. But then we create our own tools. We have tools for bringing in what we need. They're tailored for our pipeline, and it picks things the way we need them to. And when we publish things as well, or when we need to make more tedious work, we make them automatic by creating a tool that makes things for us and stuff like that. We have a pipeline, like every studio obviously have a pipeline department that programs those things for us. And so yeah, we have a slightly different Maya than everybody else. And
yeah, none of these softwares are used as they come out of the box anyway.
Exactly. And we have different tabs for different departments, and we have our own special tools that we get developing. It's in constant.
Are you involved in that, or at least in asking for them? Or
yes, artists work hand by hand with the pipeline department, and we ask them what we think could be improved or what we think we need, or and they get feedback from us, and we test things that they do, and we make sure that it goes the right direction. And they need our feedback, obviously, to make the tools usable for us, and we need their feedback to know what's possible and what's not, and things like that. So yeah, it's teamwork.
Cool. And in terms of notes, I guess at some point client notes are going to affect what you do, but as well as client notes, you might get notes, I guess, from animation or lighting, if they need this or they need that. So how are you set up for dealing with feedback on your?
Well, we get notes from client because layout needs to be approved by the client before we pass everything to the next departments. So the only times that things come back to us after we pass everything to animation is when things change, or there's a sequence changing, or there's a new camera, there's a new read time, and they need to push things back to us to do our stuff again for them, or when something breaks, because things break as well, and we need to redo things that are not working properly. But generally speaking, in an ideal world, when the client approves our work, then we should be done. Layout is done, and then we pass everything to the next departments, and that's it. That was our part.
And in terms of like animation and real world effects, obviously if you have match move cameras, that changes things a little bit. But in terms of full CG, is it pretty similar if it's animation or if it's photoreal? Is it really changing anything for you?
The only difference is that we have, obviously, we don't have a plate, we don't have the restriction of the cam track, and we have the freedom to do whatever we want to do. We still have to stick with the previs and follow instructions, obviously, depending on the show and the director. We have more or less freedom. Sometimes we can give ideas or try to propose things, but in most cases, especially in bigger movies, we have to stick with the previs and what the director or the client wants. But there's not much difference. Other than that, the workflow is the same.
When you want to propose something creatively, so you would propose that to the supervisor, and then they would propose it to the client, or?
Yeah, usually we artists show their stuff to the lead shows stuff to the studio VFX supervisor. Every show has a studio VFX supervisor, for Scanline in this case, and the VFX supervisor in the studio shows our work to the VFX supervisor for client, who is the one that is in direct contact with the director. So once they approve, they show to the director approves, great. If not, the director notes go down the ladder, down to us again, and then we have to start over and show the studio VFX soup, and then the client VFX soup, and then director, and then back then.
Yeah. Do you ever think it would be nice if they just sat in a room? I mean, I feel like layouts, you could set it up to. I mean, that's one of the things I was thinking of. Some of the real is like where, you know, if you could just have them sitting next to you, like a flame up or a colorist does, and just do layout stuff.
If the director had the time to sit by my side and tell me what they need, we'll be faster. But they don't have the time to sit the side of every artist of her studio. Where there's a lot of us.
Oh yeah.
So this is the I guess the most efficient way still. And the VFX supervisor, especially on the client side, they know what the director wants, and they're the ones that tell the director what's possible and what's not and all that stuff. So when they show stuff to the director, it's much closer to what they know the director wants than if we started from scratch.
What's the biggest change you've seen in a sequence or show you've been working on?
Oh, reshoots. Sometimes, you know the case. There are a few cases that are very famous that when they do a family screening or a pre-screening, they decide that the movie's not working and they decide to reshoot 1/3 of the movie. So we have to go back to editing, and the movie changes quite a lot. So yeah, sometimes you get to months after shooting is over, you start over.
And then you're on other projects, you disappear, you know, and then it comes back and it's a different movie. And the dog's getting involved. No. Yeah, it looks really sunny though. I guess you've just you've laid out your apartment to look sunny.
I have a lot of light, and the camera picks as much light as they can, but it's quite
cool. So that's been really good. I think I've learned a lot about layout. I'm sure there's more we could go back, and I'd like people to post any specific questions they have. If we would like to try and get you back, or if you have any questions that come through in the comments, we'll try and get you on board. Where can people go to find out more about you and what you do?
As we said, Twitter is a good place, Instagram as well, and my YouTube channel as well.
What's the name of your YouTube channel?
It would be my name under Carolin'a Jiménez García, which is my second surname. We have two family names, but probably just by Googling it or my handle, the Okinfografia thing that is so hard to.
Is that's your Instagram as well?
Yes, Instagram, Twitter, and everything.
But Twitter, if you want the breakdowns of like history of VFX, techniques of VFX,
and super long threads of just movie stuff.
Yeah, and they're like pretty detailed. And I actually found it really good if you know the thread on Rollerbot on Twitter. If you're gonna read them, because the thread on Rollerbot is a game changer, I think, for Twitter. Cool, that's brilliant. And do you have a website? No.
I have a blog, but it's also in Spanish, where I write articles on trying to explain things on how to start in this industry, and I have a list of schools in the Spanish-speaking community that they can go to and stuff like that. It's a blog on VFX, but it's in Spanish as well.
It's in Spanish, but lots of people speak Spanish. You can use Google Translate. Lots of people are learning Spanish. Lots of people speak Italian or Portuguese, and they can kind of muddle through a blog in Spanish.
That's true as well. And if anybody has a question or they need information in English, just let me know. Let's keep connected, because I'm happy answering as much as I can in both languages. So yeah, we can do that.
Brilliant. So that was Carolin'a Jiménez García, and we will be speaking again soon. And that's the end of this episode.
Thank you very much for having me, and you know where I am if you need me.
Thank you for coming on.